This is Nightman. Welcome to Plug and Play. Today we're going to look at Sony's camera for the PS2, the EyeToy. Released in 2003, the EyeToy was a digital camera device, similar to a webcam. This piece of technology uses computer vision and gesture recognition to process images taken by the camera. Players were able to interact with the games using motion, color detection, and with the use of its built-in microphone, sound. This isn't the first camera to be used as a console accessory, however, as Nintendo had the Game Boy camera and Sega had the Dream Eye for the Dreamcast. This also wouldn't be the last time either, as the EyeToy had successors for the PS3 and the PS4, known as the PlayStation Eye and the PlayStation Camera. Microsoft joined in on the bandwagon with the Kinect, and the less we talk about that, the better. Logitech manufactured early EyeToy models, however, later models were manufactured by a company called Namtai. Hooking up the EyeToy is very simple. Just plug the camera into the USB connector on your PS2. In order to play your EyeToy, you will need a well-lit room, as the camera will have a blinking red light, indicating that your room is too dark to play your EyeToy game. It is also recommended that you have a lot of space when you're playing your EyeToy, so make sure to move away from some furniture. Most of the EyeToy games do open up with this video, giving you instructions on how to use the device. Speaking of games, I'm gonna go over some of these. While I've owned Anti-Grav since it came out, I bought the rest of these off of Amazon for the purpose of this video. First, let's start off with a third-party title, Sega Superstars. Once you boot up this game, you get an intro of Sonic, Billy Hatcher, and Knights running around all over the place. I guess it's because all three of them were created by Yuji Naka. Throughout the intro, all the other Sega characters show up, and we get stock footage of kids and teenagers playing the games. Anyway, let's get into the minigames. First, Virtual Fighter. This is pretty much the fighting game, but adding punch and block prompts. If you attack your opponent without a punch prompt, they will block your attack. This game would have been a lot better if it didn't have one problem. Sometimes when I didn't even have a fist going at my opponent, the game for whatever reason still registered it as an attempt to punch my opponent, even after I had blocked their attacks. What makes matters worse, this happens when I didn't even have an attack prompt, so my opponent would just block the non-existent attack. Anyway, let's move on to Sega's mascot, Sonic, and see how his game fares. This is pretty much the bonus stages from Sonic 2, but with music and voice clips from Sonic Adventure, motion controls, and instead of getting one Chaos Emerald at the end of the stage, you collect all 7 throughout the stage. If you are successful in getting all the Chaos Emeralds, you will turn into Super Sonic. You move Sonic using your arms, and can circle around the stage to get rings and an emerald. However, this game could have been better if the controls didn't suck. There are times when it's really hard to get Sonic to move out of the way of spikes, no matter how much I move my arm. And because of the controls, I also ended up missing at least one Chaos Emerald. Samba de Amigo, one of the rhythm games. Very simple. You just wave your hands over the beat buttons as the blue balls hit them. The game was alright at times, but sometimes the buttons weren't responsive. Specifically the ones on the bottom. Super Monkey Ball. You control Eye by having your hands down in the green area to move him forward, have your hands up to stop, and turn your hands left or right to go in said directions. The goal is to collect bananas and reach the end of the stage. The controls are very responsive, and I had no trouble getting Eye to move. Be warned that your arms will get tired after playing this for a while. Nights into Dreams, a minigame based on the cult classic Sega Saturn game. Controls are as followed. Have your arms down to descend, have your arms up to ascend, lift your right arm to head right, and lift your left arm to go left. Gameplay is essentially the same as the actual Knights game, where you follow rings and reach the Edea capture. Collecting blue chips will enable you to destroy the Edea capture, and to reach your goal, you have to find the Edea Palace. The problem with Knights is the controls. I at least got Knights to move, but the controls can be so unresponsive that Knights would stop constantly and would move pretty slow. Even when I was able to get him to move, I was having trouble going in the direction of the rings. Do yourselves a favor and just play the original game. Available on Steam. Puyo Pop Fever. This game was simple, yet is also one of the more fun games to play on the collection. You use your head, arms, and hands to guide the Puyo into the correct trays that are the same color as said Puyos. I had little issues with the game, as sometimes your head may knock the Puyo in the opposite direction, but overall this is one game that actually feels like it can work as an EyeToy game. Virtua Striker. In this game, you hit a soccer ball with your head to pop balloons. The points you get from the balloons depend on what color the balloon is. Blue gives you 30, red gives you 50, and green gives you 100. The game does work pretty fine, however, it's pretty boring. Hey, remember Billy Hatcher and the giant egg for the GameCube? I do! I also remember that his game sucked. When playing the original Billy Hatcher game felt like a chore with a regular controller, I did not have high expectations for a motion-based Billy Hatcher minigame. Controls are as followed. Wave your hands on the hand outline to control Billy while he is rolling an egg. Wave your hands left or right to turn left or right. Your objective is to eliminate all the enemies and roll your egg to the goal within the time limit. The control is pretty awkward, and as a result, Billy moves at a snail's pace. And I ended up walking past enemies, which, by the way, have some really dumb AI because they could have easily attacked me there, but just turned around. Choo Choo Rocket, a game where you lead the choo-choos to their rocket by waving your hand around the switches to activate bridges to make sure they don't fall to their death. Now, this game sounds pretty basic, but sometimes no matter how much I'm waving around the switches, I couldn't keep the bridges to stand. However, other times it worked, and I was able to get a lot of choo-choos into the rocket. Space Channel 5. Another rhythm game. This time you have to mimic the dance moves of the Mora Lion, so pretty much think Simon. However, the control is very unresponsive. No matter how many times I try hitting the buttons on the screen, it would not register unless it felt like it. Easily the worst game on the collection. House of the Dead. In this game, you have to hit zombies that pop up on screen very quickly. This was an alright time killer. However, there were times when my movement would not register any hits on the zombies. Finally, we're at the end of Sega Superstars with a Crazy Taxi game. And unlike the actual Crazy Taxi, this game isn't very fun. This is the one game that takes advantage of the EyeToy having a built-in mic, as what you do in the game is wave your hands while shouting, "Hey, taxi!" at your TV. It's very pointless, and I do recommend being home alone if you play this. Otherwise, people in the house would think you're crazy. Now it's time to move on to another minigame collection. This time coming from Sony themselves. Well, their London studio anyway. EyeToy Play 2. The games in EyeToy Play 2 are pretty simple, and you have this little robot dude talking to you about the games you select. Anyway, let's get into them. Air guitar. Very simple. You move your hand to catch a falling icon. Once the icon hit its target, you strum. However, it's not always responsive. There are times I still strummed the imaginary guitar, and the game still registered it as a miss. It made me want to break an instrument.
You're gonna die!
That was cool, Beavis. We're like on our way.
Bubble Pop. In this game, you have to pop all the bubbles on screen, but you have to try your best not to pop the red bubbles. If you pop 10 red bubbles, you will lose. This game works decently for the most part. However, when you're just trying to pop one last bubble, it can be pretty unresponsive, thus screwing you over. But other than that, it's an okay game. DIY. I can only assume you say it by the initials because the robot doesn't even say the name of the game. A home improvement type of game. No, not that home improvement game. You get multiple jobs a day doing some handyman work. The saw was a pain in the ass to move around, and some parts like fixing a leak in the basement or destroying a wall felt tedious. Drummond, another rhythm game, but unlike the guitar one, the drum game was actually fun. You simply have to hit the icons once they reach a drum. You will also be challenged by an in-game drummer with a Simon game, where you memorize and hit the same drums he hit. Goal Attack, a game where you play as a goalie. This game is a little tough because you have to make sure the ball hits your body directly, and it can't just be anywhere else that's showing up from the camera image. Sometimes the control could be unresponsive as well. I clearly was trying to move left where the ball was headed, but the game registered it as me moving right. You also get a fitness test where you have to run on a track, but I was unable to go fast enough. Overall, this game is bogged down by wonky controls. Home Run. This game starts off with some batting practice, although I had a pretty hard time getting a home run. Once you get to an actual game, hitting the ball isn't a problem, but rather actually running to the bases. But because I couldn't hit the ball far enough, I was unable to reach the first base in time. The baseball game could have been better. Knockout, a boxing game. They call it knockout because Punch-Out was already taken. You simply throw your punches at a boxer with a Muppet mouth. Controls are pretty responsive for the most part, and I actually liked it more than Wii Boxing. Once you get knocked out by your opponent, you have to clear all the stars off the screen to get up. Sadly, it looked like I was too late to clear them all, and I lost. But it was still one of the more fun sports games on here. Kung 2, a sequel to a minigame from the original EyeToy play. Enemies will attack you, and you have to hit them with your hand to knock them back. It works pretty well, and the game is pretty fun until a certain point. At best, it's one of those games where it's just a good distraction. Monkey Bars, a game where you have to touch a colored button to get this mechanical monkey to swing. The 2 buttons on the bottom worked fine. However, the 2 on the top, sometimes the blue one will work, but the red one I could not get any response out of for the life of me, which is a problem in a lot of areas. Overall, this game needed some work. Mr. Chef, a game where you work in the kitchen of a fast food joint. The waitress will give you an order, and you put together the ingredients on screen for said order. Once you get the correct order, you ring the bell on top and move on to the next order. However, you will run out of items like fries and pancakes. When that occurs, you will have to wave your hand around said item to make more. The controls are very responsive in this, and I had no problem picking up any items. Other parts in this game would involve you making milkshakes by swinging your arms in a circle, and boy does this work pretty well and it's fun. Hitting ice cubes with your hands into a glass of soda, and filling drinks with a machine, which is my least favorite part, as you pull a lever to fill the drinks, and you have to make sure you don't overflow the glass. You will also be challenged by a creepy looking chef, who, like the boxer, has a Muppet mouth. The challenges go from chopping pickles, mashing tomatoes, and grating cheese. Overall, I think the cooking game is one of the best games on the collection. Secret Agent. In this game, you have to grab 6, 8, or 10 of items like a hacksaw or rope, for example, while trying to avoid being detected. To avoid getting caught, you have to stand perfectly still and to be sure no light hits your arm when trying to grab an item. Things get a little tricky when you get to the tower entrance, where you have to activate colored locks in a certain order to proceed. It's pretty tough when you are under a time limit, and you still have to avoid spotlights. Then it goes back to being easy when you get to the guard on patrol. All you have to do is disable the alarms while the guard's back is turned. More collecting later, and we get to a lock combination while avoiding a laser. And it's also pretty easy. After that, grab 6 folders. I kept up until I got to the bunker entrance, not because it was the same exact thing as the previous door lock level, but because for some weird reason I could not get the yellow lock to move, even though I was clearly waving my hand around that area and I had no problems with the other ones. Overall, a decent game that spiced things up as it progressed, but that damn yellow lock screwed me over. And for the final game on the EyeToy Play 2 list, table tennis. Pretty much you're playing ping pong, but with your hands. You start off playing a bonus game before every match. I had no issues serving and hitting the ball, as this game is very responsive, and any shortcomings I had were my own fault. Granted, I feel like I'm cheating because I'm using 2 hands, while my opponents are using paddles like normal people, but this game was still pretty fun. Well, I'm pretty much done with these mini-game collections, so let's move to a rhythm game. EyeToy Groove. There are multiple modes in this game, but I'm only going through the solo groove because I dragged this video out already by talking about 2 minigame collections. The gameplay is similar to the Beat Freak game from the first EyeToy play, but with licensed music. You have to hit the targets with your arms on the edges of the screen to the beat of the music. During gameplay, you get to do freestyle, where you are free to do any dance moves. There's even a part where you pose by having your arms where these little circles on the screen are at. The game is fun, but there is one problem I have with it, and granted this is just my opinion, but it's that the music selection kinda sucks, as it consists of shitty pop songs that came out during the time of this game's release, but there are some good songs in the mix too from back in the day, like Jungle Boogie by Kool and the Gang, and a few others. Fun game, but it needs a better selection of music. One of the mini games from EyeToy Play 2 inspired a spy-themed EyeToy game. EyeToy Operation Spy, where the most challenging puzzle is getting the game to scan your face just to get started. Good lord, even making the slightest movement can fuck you up while it's scanning. Anyway, You have missions like decrypting an image by turning this cube with your hands and land on the matching symbol under a time limit. Match it correctly 3 times and you've completely decrypted an image. We get to another mission where you have to match the image of a scientist, and holy shit, the lip syncing is bad.
Photo fit technology will identify him. Here's how it works.
Anyway, on the left hand side, you choose what facial features you want to work on to identify the culprit. And on the right hand side, you match said facial feature of the image on the bottom right corner. You get your matches wrong and it will deduct 5 seconds from the mission. Next mission, you pinpoint the scientist's location and you do a skydiving mission. I gave up after that. This game, while not horrible, felt like a chore to play because it was pretty boring for the most part. Next up is a game that's actually pretty fun. EyeToy Anti-Grav. P.S. I apologize for the footage for Anti-Grav looking a little messed up. I'm not sure why that happened. This game is not developed by Sony's London studio, but was actually developed by Harmonix, the people who gave us Guitar Hero and Rock Band. Unlike most EyeToy games, this one doesn't have the player on video, but rather the game uses a tracker on the bottom right corner that tracks your movements, and therefore is how you control your character. Control does take some time to learn and get used to, but once you get the hang of it, it will run pretty smooth, although I did still get some trouble steering at times. There is also a turbo meter, which refills when you pull off tricks. In order to trigger a turbo boost, you have to crouch. When you grind on rails, you are unable to get off, but you can stack up points. To reach out to a target, just move your left or right hand, depending on where the target is, to hit them. There are also obstacles where you have to duck and jump, which obviously requires you to actually jump and crouch to get your character to do so in the game. Once you hit a launch pad, you will fly in the air. To have your character move up, stand still. And to have him move down, bend your knees. Bad news for those with Superman 64 flashbacks, you have to fly through rings while you're flying. When you jump off a ramp, you can do tricks by moving your hands around in many directions. Also, just like the Tony Hawk games, you are able to do one trick after another while you're in the air. One of my main issues with the game is that there are times when it's registering a jump when I didn't do a jump. But other than that, I'd say Anti-Grav was a pretty good EyeToy game. Now this is where I stop talking about the EyeToy games, but there is some EyeToy functionality in games like DDR. Having an EyeToy connected to your console while playing DDR allows you to play hands and feet mode, where you're on screen. And in addition to the arrows for your steps, you have to move your left and right hands when the hand icon hits the top. I think it's a fun little addition, even if it's a little minor. Also, in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, you can use the EyeToy to take a picture of yourself and insert it onto a created skater, leading to some pretty disturbing results. What's really cool is that the EyeToy is compatible with the PS3. The quality may be low compared to the PlayStation Eye, for example, but hey, at least it works. Overall, the EyeToy was a pretty interesting idea from Sony. Not all the games were perfect, but with a handful of the games, there was still some fun to be had. You can get the EyeToy for a pretty cheap price off of Amazon, bundled with a game or not. This device was a product of its time though, and some of the games may not have aged well. But the EyeToy was a device that can be looked back on pretty fondly compared to some similar attempts. Yeah, I'm looking at your direction, Kinect. But anyway, this was Plug and Play. I'm Nightman, and I'll see you later.